Good afternoon, everyone. Start with some opening comments. I have an echo over there. There it goes. The United States is deeply disappointed by Russia's veto of... Still, maybe we can fix that. I'll start over. Can everybody hear me twice or just me? Yeah, I'll try. Well, lucky you. Double the fun. I don't think that's true, Saeed. We'll try it again, and hopefully we'll get worked out the gremlins. The United States is deeply disappointed by Russia's veto of the United Nations Security Council's 1718 Committee Panel of Experts mandate renewal. We are also disappointed that the People's Republic of China decided to abstain after 14 years of supporting this important mandate. For the past 15 years, the 1718 Committee Panel of Experts has been the gold standard for providing fact-based, independent analysis and recommendations on the implementation of UN sanctions on the DPRK. Throughout those 15 years, the panel of experts enjoyed the Security Council's unanimous support and, up until this year, has been renewed by consensus. Russia's actions today have cynically undermined international peace and security, all to advance the corrupt bargain that Moscow has struck with the DPRK. Moscow appears to be intent on facilitating the DPRK's illegal pursuit of weapons of mass destruction, and its veto today was a self-interested effort to bury the panel's reporting on its own collusion with the DPRK to secure weapons that it can use to further its aggression against Ukraine. Russia alone will own the outcome of this veto. A DPRK more emboldened to reckless behavior and destabilizing provocations, as well as reduced prospects for an enduring peace on the Korean Peninsula. Despite today's veto and abstention, all Security Council resolutions and UN measures addressing the DPRK's unlawful WMD and ballistic missile programs remain in effect. We will continue to work to counter the DPRK's unlawful actions, work with like-minded states through all available means to limit the threat posed by the DPRK, and respond to efforts by its enablers to shield the DPRK from responsibility. And with that, John?
Sure, let me follow up on that to begin with. Say Russia alone will own the outcome of the veto. Could you explain a little bit about what you mean by that? Obviously, you're saying that Russia has a self-interest in this, but do you think there are any repercussions? Is there anything that the U.S. or elsewhere is going to do to enforce the sanctions a bit more after this?
So the sanctions will continue to be in effect, as I said, but unfortunately, this important panel has not seen its mandate renewed, and we will continue to work to secure information about the DPRK's pursuit of illegal weapons, and we will continue to work to make that information public and make it available to other members of the Security Council. But I think what we've seen as a result of Russia's, or what we will see as a result of Russia's actions today, is a DPRK that's emboldened. It continues to be largely isolated in the world, but we are in a different place than when you had Russia and China voting to uphold accountability for the DPRK. And now you've seen a Russia that has cut this bargain with the DPRK because it's in desperate need of weapons to pursue its aggression against Ukraine. And then you saw today one of the ways that Russia is delivering on its end of the bargain with DPRK, which is trying to undercut what had been up until now unanimous United Nations Security Council actions.
Just to follow up on that, I know that the U.S. has publicly spoken of cooperation with the DPRK and Russia. Is it your view that this will actually pave the way for greater cooperation? There are reports that the Russian spy chief was in Pyongyang, I think it was this week even. Is there concern that in light of this, that there will be greater military cooperation?
I don't think that what happened today paves the way for greater DPRK-Russia cooperation. I think what happened today is an example of greater DPRK-Russia cooperation. We saw that cooperation kick off last year when there began to be increased talks between the two. And then, of course, we've seen the DPRK transfer military equipment to Russia that has shown up on the battlefield in Ukraine. It's been used by Russia to further its war against Ukraine. And we've been waiting to see how some of the ways that Russia would hold up its end of the bargain. I think we saw one of them today.
Sure. Maybe I could switch topics unless somebody else has the DPRK. I was wondering if you have a reaction to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, just today on Israel, saying that that Israel must ensure urgent humanitarian assistance, and that famine has already set in Gaza.
So that order, to my understanding, was just issued in the last hour. Our team is reviewing it right now, so I don't have a detailed reaction to the full text of the order. It's something we want to review before we give that reaction. But as a general proposition, of course, increasing humanitarian assistance to Gaza is something that we support and something that we have urged Israel to help facilitate. So that general conclusion is very much something we agree with, but as it pertains to the exact text of the order, I want to give the team time here to look through it before I respond in detail.
Just one more for me. I know you just said that you want time to review it, but is it the word binding again, but the International Court of Justice, is it the view of the United States that Israel must comply with this, that it must do more?
Again, having not even reviewed the order myself and knowing that there's a team reviewing, I don't want to respond until we've had a chance to do that.
But I mean, just to follow up on that, can you say that in principle?
In principle, of course, we support the work of the ICJ, but I don't know if this, I just haven't reviewed the exact text to know how it applies in this instance, so I'm obviously loath to comment on it for that reason.
I see, okay. We might come back to this, but just on, do you have a reaction on the new Palestinian cabinet that's been announced? Is it, what do you think about it? Because the U.S. has called for reform of the Palestinian Authority. Looking at the list and the fact that a new cabinet has been announced, is this something that the United States welcomes?
So we have long urged the Palestinian Authority to form a reform cabinet with new leadership. You've heard the Secretary speak to this during his travels in the region. And so now that the PA has appointed a new cabinet, we will be looking to this new government to deliver on policies and implement credible and far-reaching reforms. It's something we've spoken to a number of times, our belief that a reformed PA is essential to delivering results for the Palestinian people and establishing the conditions for stability in both the West Bank and Gaza. So we will engage with this government based on its actions. We'll be closely tracking the steps it takes to advance the key reforms and look forward to engaging with them on that matter.
Can you get into what the specific reforms you're hoping for actually look like?
So I'm not going to get into specific reforms, but broadly speaking, we have encouraged them to implement reforms that crack down on corruption. We have encouraged them to implement reforms that increase transparency, that increase media freedoms, and increase the ability for civil society to engage with the government.
And you said you're looking for them to, I think you said, like, act on policy. Like, which policies are you hoping that they?
Well, that's what just the ones I just referred to. Yeah, those. Okay. But also, I think it's important. So we've always believed that the PA needed to be a government that was fully representative of the Palestinian people in the West Bank and in Gaza. I do note that there are Palestinians from Gaza who are members of this new cabinet. We have always made clear that we're not going to pass judgment on specific individuals. That's not for the United States to do. Those are decisions for the Palestinian people. But we do welcome them taking steps to make a cabinet that is fully representative of the Palestinian people. And now we will look to them to implement policies that follow up on reform and deliver on the demands that we have heard over and over from the Palestinian people. Saeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. You indulge me, you and my colleague. I want to go back to.
I always indulge you, Saeed.
I know you do.
I think, but I don't know if that means. I don't know if that means 14 questions are coming.
That is true.
Maybe not that much indulgence.
Yeah,
but
maybe I have more this time around. Anyway, I want to go back to the issue of the Albanese report yesterday, and you said that she made some anti-Semitic statements and so on in the past. Can you share those statements with us?
I can. I didn't actually think this was a controversial statement. She made a remark at one point referring to the Jewish lobby controlling America, and in fact expressed regret for that mark afterwards. So that's what I was referring to.
But I think the term that she was accused for is when she used the term show off or Nakba, which is exactly.
So hold on. I'm not referring to anyone else's comments,
right.
And that's not what I was referring to.
I understand, but so, the comment that she made, she said Shoah is Nakba in Arabic, which is exactly what it is.
Said,
it's a catastrophe.
Said, I'm not even familiar with the comment you're referring to, and that's not what I was referring to in my remarks.
Okay, so you also said that you disagree with the position itself, that you you don't approve having that position in the United Nations. Why not?
We have been very clear that we do not believe genocide has taken place. We do not believe that's an appropriate term or a constructive one to use in this instance.
So let me ask you something. Is there a reasonable definition of genocide that would include what happened in Bosnia or to the Rohingya, and at the same time exclude what is happening in
So,
Gaza?
Saeed, the definition of genocide is one that is well
Okay.
well founded under international humanitarian law.
Right.
And if you look at the position that the department's legal advisors laid out before the ICJ, they do go through this chapter and verse. I'm not going to repeat all of it here from the podium. I obviously don't have the filing with me, but you can look where we do go through exactly why we don't believe genocide is an appropriate term to use in this in this regard.
Although many countries in the world now are more and more using the term. In fact, France said that they would probably try the soldiers that served in this war for war crimes if they are involved. But anyway, let me ask you about a couple of other things, if you allow me. The Canadian Minister of a Canadian minister said that the United States implored them to continue aiding UNRWA. Can you confirm that the ambassador to the UN actually implored the Canadians to continue aiding UNRWA?
I am not going to get into private diplomatic conversations, but we have always made clear that we think the work that UNRWA does is important. Right. That we support the hold on. I see the interruption coming. So sorry. That's fine. I understand. We have always made we have always made clear that we support the work that UNRWA does, and we have always made clear that it's important that work not be interrupted, even though we thought it was appropriate on behalf of the United States to suspend our funding. Now, of course, that funding has been blocked going forward. So we have engaged with other countries about different ways to ensure that the delivery of humanitarian assistance to the Palestinian people is not interrupted, that it continues. And again, I think you have to go back to something I've said before that's been lost a little bit. When we suspended our funding, we only had an upcoming funding of about payment of about $300,000 coming. Not a major. When you look at the overall funding that we provide, it was not a major amount of money that we were providing any time before this summer. Anyway, so we have been working with other countries to make sure that work can continue unimpeded.
So, by the way, I mean, this suspension now that funding is blocked. Does that make the investigation or waiting on the investigation moot? Does it make the issue moot?
So with respect to a question of U.S. funding, it's now blocked. That's an act of Congress, and
you're now waiting
hold on. It would members of Congress, I'm sure, will want to see the results of that investigation, decide what they might do in future funding cycles. But certainly, we want to see the results of that investigation as well. And I should note that other countries have said they want to see, and the UN itself, which commissioned this investigation on its own accord, has made very clear that they think it's important that they see that they get a timely, full accounting of what that investigation shows.
And finally, I promise. An Israeli officer.
That's not too many, Saeed.
No. Anyway, an Israeli officer said that Israel engaged in waste of or overbombing and so on. He said we could have done the same thing with 10% of the kind of destruction that they levied on Gaza. Have you seen that report?
I've seen that comment. I'm not sure I follow, Saeed.
No, he's saying that Israel engaged in obvious overkill in terms of the amount of bombing, the waste, the destruction of urban areas, and so on. They could have done exactly the same thing with 10% of the destruction. So have you seen that report? And maybe you ought to take a look at it. If you haven't
I have not seen that specific comment, but obviously we have urged the government of Israel to take every step that it possibly can to minimize harm to civilians and minimize harm to civilian infrastructure.
Thank you.
Alex, go ahead.
May I go back to Russia, please?
Sure.
Thanks so much. Starting from Kirby's statements this morning, he revealed very interesting details about communication between Washington and Moscow, in run after last week's attack. He said that there's some written warning to Russians early last month, and he also said it was one of the multiple warnings since last September. I was hoping you could help us unpack it a little bit. How many terror attacks do you believe you have prevented in Russia from happening? How many people's lives you have saved, you think? But it's all about ISIS threat. And finally, why do you think that they chose not to act on this very knowledge?
I think you're going to be disappointed in my answer because unfortunately I'm not able to provide further information. As usual, when it comes to information that we're able to declassify and make public, there is a limit of what we can say to protect sources and methods, and that's very much the case here. What I can say is what the Admiral said this morning, which is we did on March 7th provide a warning to Moscow. We provide clear, detailed information about the terrorist threat to large gatherings, including concerts. We then the next day put out a public warning urging citizens to avoid large gatherings. And that was not the first warning that we've given to Russia. Now, when it comes to why they didn't take any action or why they didn't take sufficient action or whether they could have taken sufficient action, I just can't speak to that.
So they chose not to take an action, and they
No,
start blaming.
that's not that's not what I said.
Yeah, the reality is that they didn't act.
They didn't
on that
prevent the.
knowledge.
They didn't prevent
This-
the.
that-
They didn't certainly didn't obviously didn't prevent the terrorist attack. But I can't speak to
Right. And they
any
start
actions.
blaming Ukraine and the U.S. And then today they said that they have established facts that there was some funding involved from Ukraine. How do you square those circles? So what is the intention there? And do you think that this was deliverable approach from Russia from get-go?
A deliberate what from Russia?
Approach like policy to, when they received that knowledge, they decided to build around it some new.
So I don't think there's any circle that needs to be squared here. I think the Russian government is putting forward propaganda and disinformation. I think that's been very clear that they are trying to use this terrorist attack, this tragic incident where we saw, unfortunately, Russian citizens killed, to justify their aggression in Ukraine. And the underlying facts don't actually matter. They're going to make up supposed facts to back up what they want to do. That's what they've done really since the outset of this war, and sadly, that's what they're doing here.
Thank you. Matt, on Evan Gershkovich, tomorrow is the first year's anniversary of his arrest. Kirby today confirmed that we are trying to still, discuss with Russia some options to get him out of Russian jail. Is there any active offer from the U.S. since last December they rejected the one that they haven't responded yet?
I'm just not. I have never spoken in that level of detail about our work to secure the release of either Evan Gershkovich or Paul Whelan, and I'm not going to do so today.
And my final one, if I may, on Armenia, we discussed yesterday Azerbaijan's reaction, and he responded to that. But Russians also seem to have been uneasy about this meeting. So Zakharova today, built up around what Azir said yesterday. It was divisive. She said that the West is trying to, quote-unquote, create new rifts in the region, forcing the countries in the region to follow up anti-Russian line. So what is the response to the hard?
So I would say, if anything, some of the turbulence we have seen in the region has been fueled by Russia's actions over the past few months. With respect to this meeting in Brussels, as I said yesterday, it is to focus on economic resilience for Armenia as it works to diversify its trade partnerships and address humanitarian needs and nothing else.
On Wednesday, 11 women human rights activists were sentenced to 60 years, a total of 60 years of imprisonment in Iran. I was wondering if you have any comments on that.
So we condemn the Iranian regime's use of harsh sentences for women's rights activists that are meant to intimidate them and suppress their voices. As Iran's leadership continues its violent crackdown on any dissent, they should know that the world is watching. Ongoing, widespread reports of torture, forced confessions, and restrictions on legal counsel undermine any shred of credibility in the decisions handed down by Iranian courts. And the United States continues to coordinate with our allies and partners to condemn these sham trials and to pursue accountability for Iran's human rights abuses, and we will continue to take action to support the people of Iran in practical ways, both seen and unseen, in coordination with our allies and partners.
On Afghanistan, the family of American citizen detained by the Taliban, Ryan Corbett, released a statement this week saying that they had received a disturbing phone call from him in which the family says it was clear that his mental and physical health is significantly deteriorating. CBS News interviewed the family in December last year, where they highlighted the same concern about his health. And I believe at the time, Envoy Tom West he did have a meeting with the Taliban. I was wondering if you could update us on any talks between the US and the Taliban with Tom West or otherwise.
Let me just first say, with respect to the family, that as is always the case when you think about people who have their loved ones being wrongfully detained overseas, I cannot imagine the pain that they're going through and the grief that they're suffering and how difficult it must be knowing that their loved one is going through such a tragic hardship. And so what I can say to the family and what I can say to the American public on behalf of this government is that we are working every day to try and bring Ryan Corbett home. We have continually pressed, including in our meetings with Taliban representatives, for the immediate and unconditional release of Ryan Corbett and other Americans detained in Afghanistan. We have made clear to the Taliban that these detentions are a significant obstacle to positive engagement, and we will continue to do that. We are using every lever we can to try to bring Ryan and these other wrongfully detained Americans home from Afghanistan. Yeah.
Matt, I don't know if you saw the report in the Politico 2 hours ago about the day after, Gaza day after, and the talks between the U.S. and regional partners. And according to the report, quoting U.S. official, that there's two ideas that gaining traction. One is to form a multinational task force, and the second one is to form a peacekeeping Palestinian force. But my question is, if you can answer to this, that is the Palestinian Authority included in these talks?
So I'm not going to speak to private diplomatic conversations or speak to what it sounds like are reported, anonymous comments from reported officials inside the United States government. What I will say is that what the United States has made clear, and the Secretary first made this clear in a speech in Tokyo last November, is that there are a few principles that we want to see apply to when the conflict ends. And one of those is that the Palestinian Authority should govern both Gaza and the West Bank. We want to see a united West Bank and Gaza that is governed by the Palestinian people through the Palestinian Authority. So we have engaged in talks with partner countries in the region, and we have engaged in talks with the Palestinian Authority about exactly what that might look like. And as you might imagine, there are a number of different proposals on the table. I won't go into those here for probably obvious reasons, but yes, we have engaged with both the Palestinian Authority and with countries in the region about the full panoply of post-conflict issues that Gaza will face.
You said before on this podium that countries in the region are committed to Gaza the day after, but they want something from Israel to be committed, for example, to the two-state solution or that. Israeli leadership still won't commit to this. Is there any update on your talk with the Israelis about that? Are you being able to push them beyond their public staff?
So I don't have any update to offer. Obviously, they've spoken to this a number of occasions, but the work that we have been doing with our Arab partners is to put together not just a kind of nebulous idea, but a concrete proposal of what this would look like, of what post-conflict governance would look like, both as it pertains to security in Gaza and the rebuilding and reconstruction of Gaza, and a political path forward for the Palestinian people that answers their very legitimate aspirations. As part of that, we have had discussions with Saudi Arabia about how to further integrate Israel with its neighbors, including with Saudi Arabia, and those are discussions that are ongoing as well. So that work continues, but at some point our goal is very much to have something to put forward, to put on the table for Israel to look at. And until we get to that point, and it's something we're working hard on every day, I don't want to sort of speculate about what decisions might look like.
Yeah, Matt, what role will the Palestinian Authority play in the operation of the pier in Gaza in 2 or 3 weeks?
So I would defer to the Pentagon to that question. They are the lead in the construction of this pier, and I would, for that sort of detail, I would defer to them.
But do you want the PA to play any role there?
Again, I would defer to the Pentagon for that question. The PA is not currently operating in Gaza. I know they've had employees that were in Gaza, but of course the PA has not been the governing authority in Gaza for some time. So when it comes to any kind of concrete role in the operation of the pier and the delivery of humanitarian assistance, like I said, I'd have to defer to the Pentagon.
On this particular issue, it is said that the Israelis have agreed to actually provide security for the operation of the pier. Are you aware of that?
I've seen those reports. I don't have any confirmation of them. Yeah, go ahead.
A couple of weeks ago, I asked you about, repeated instances of Israeli soldiers rifling through and parading, women's underwear, especially in light of ongoing allegations of sexual abuse against Israeli soldiers and allegations that they tortured and sexually abused UNRA staffers in order to coerce false confessions. I'm wondering, since then, we've heard troubling details of these allegations, including soldiers sticking electrified rods up people's anuses. We've continued to see not single-digit, but now piles of photos and videos of soldiers parading through women's underwear. So I'm wondering, what are the updates on those instances we talked about a few weeks ago, and what is the update now that this keeps seemingly happening unabated?
So I would say whenever we see these reports, we make clear to the Israeli government what we make clear publicly, which is that they need to be investigated, and if appropriate, there needs to be accountability. And I would refer you to a comment that the IDF Advocate General, Major General Yifat Tomer Yerushalmi, who I believe is the chief investigator for the IDF, said several weeks ago in a letter when she wrote and said that she had encountered actions by IDF soldiers that do not meet IDF values, that deviate from orders and disciplinary boundaries, and have crossed the criminal threshold, causing strategic damage to Israel in the international area. These acts and statements on part of individuals who do represent the collective have no place in the IDF. And you saw the chief of staff of the IDF, Herzi Halevi, say, we must be careful not to use force where it is not required, to distinguish between a terrorist and who is not to take anything that is not ours, a souvenir or weapons, and not to film revenge videos. So the IDF has made very clear itself, this is in the United States speaking, that they have seen inappropriate actions take place by IDF soldiers, and they need to be investigated, and those responsible need to be held accountable, and we would very much agree with that.
And then on the sexual abuse allegations, any sort of update on?
I don't have any update on those. What I understand are ongoing investigations.
And then just on the assurances, earlier you said after receiving assurances from Israel that they're not violating humanitarian law, the U.S. so far has not seen proof of that. Wondering what these assurances look like, because we have all seen proof from the International Court of Justice, from the United Nations, and from footage, especially the past few weeks, over and over again, of Israel seemingly targeting civilians, hospitals, churches. Footage even yesterday showing Israeli forces seeming to execute unarmed Palestinians waving white flags. They're blocking aid to the point that the U.S. is trying to build a pier to deliver aid as if Israel is a belligerent and not an ally. So with all this, how is Israel not violating humanitarian law? Are these assurances just Israel saying that they promised they're not, and they evidently continue to do so?
I spoke to this extensively on Monday and Tuesday, and I would encourage you to check the transcript. I'll do a little bit of it again, but I think I will spare everyone else here 15 or 20 minutes of me inveighing on the national security memo again. But what I will say is we received assurances from the government of Israel that are consistent with the requirements of the national security memo. Now, but I think to your underlying question, we look at those assurances through a lens of the ongoing processes that we have to answer this very question. And we do have processes going on examining specific incidents in the conduct of the campaign, and those processes are ongoing. They've not reached a final determination at this point.
Thank you, Matt. I'm wondering if you have any reaction and comments about Hamas leader visit to Iran and what he said about Israel. He said that Israel is losing the international community support, and he took the UN security resolution as an evidence that Israel is losing the support. Do you have any reaction and comment on that?
So I'm not going to respond broadly to something that a leader of Hamas said, but I would say with respect to the UN Security Council resolution, we've made very clear our position on that resolution, which is we think it is consistent with our longstanding position. It is consistent with our longstanding position that there ought to be a ceasefire linked to the release of hostages, and that's what we have believed Israel's position to be as well.
And do you have any sense that Israel is losing the international community support because they are not following the UN Security Council resolution?
Look, I think if you look around the world, there are a number of countries who have not supported Israel's action from the beginning. I think that's been pretty clear and not at all in dispute. And then there have been countries like the United States that have backed Israel's right to defend itself, while at times disagreeing with certain ways they went about this campaign, and calling on them to do more to both protect civilians and deliver increase the delivery of humanitarian assistance to those civilians.
Thank you, sir. According to some media reports, India has submitted the findings of the attempted murder of Sikh human rights lawyer Gurpatwant Singh Pannu in New York. Could you share some details, please?
I'll have to get back to you. I have not seen those reports.
So after the attack in Moscow, officials are warning that the group has also set its sights on Western targets. How would you respond to the threat posed by ISIS?
That have set its sights on what?
So how you?
I missed the middle part there of the build up to the question.
So intelligence reports and officials are warning that the group has also set its sights on Western targets. How would you respond
on
to
Western targets? Oh, I see. I'm sorry.
ISIS?
I apologize. So we remain vigilant against the evolving threat posed by terrorist groups, including ISIS-K. We have maintained an unwavering focus on terrorism since the president took office 3 years ago, working both unilaterally and with our partners to successfully disrupt threats around the globe and degrade ISIS. In addition, in February 2022, operating on the president's orders, U.S. military forces successfully targeted Haji Abdullah, the leader of ISIS. Later that year, at the president's direction, the United States successfully included an airstrike in Kabul, Afghanistan that killed the emir of a different terrorist group, Al-Qaeda, Ayman al-Zawahiri, and we will continue to work to hold ISIS accountable for its actions and prevent terrorist attacks against the United States and other Western countries.
So the main hideouts of these terrorist groups are based in Afghanistan, and the United States always said that it will continue to have the ability to target terrorists in Afghanistan who pose a threat to American interest. So is there any action expected?
So we remain committed to ensuring that Afghanistan can never again be a launching pad for terrorism, and we continue to push the Taliban to fulfill all of their counterterrorism commitments to the international community. We have made clear to the Taliban that it is their responsibility to ensure that they give no safe haven to terrorists, whether it be Al-Qaeda or ISIS-K or any other terrorist organization. And we remain vigilant against the evolving threat of these terrorist groups. And our global coalition to defeat ISIS and the C5+1 help intensify our efforts to monitor terrorist threats from the region and prevent terrorists' ability to raise funds, travel, and spread propaganda. Sean, go ahead.
Sure. A couple other issues. Venezuela. So you issued a statement, I believe last night, on this, on the opposition struggles to field a candidate against Maduro. Are you under the impression that this violates the understandings in Barbados, the Norwegian brokered understandings, and what does this mean about a potential snapback of sanctions?
So I would say that we remain deeply concerned, and it's not just the United States that's deeply concerned, it's our regional partners who share this concern about decisions by the Venezuelan National Electoral Council to prevent opposition parties from registering candidates for the upcoming presidential election. We are going to continue to make clear to Maduro and his representatives that there needs to be, they need to ensure international observer access. They need to end the jailing and harassment of civil society members, and they need to allow a free and fair election. And then, as we have made clear, actions that run counter to the letter and the spirit of the Barbados Agreement will have consequences. We've spoken to that. We've spoken to the fact that there's a general license that expires next month. I'm not going to make any determinations from here about how about what decision we will take then, but we have been very clear with with Maduro and his representatives about what we expect them to take and what the consequences could be if they don't.
Just a brief follow-up, not to put words in your mouth, but you're saying that there's no determination. Yeah, there's no determination from here as of now what decision will take. Is there still time, basically? I mean, could they still? Is there still time?
So the only thing I'll say is we've made clear that that general license with respect to oil expires in April, and you heard us say some months ago that that's an important date to watch. We allowed another general license to expire and not be renewed. I think it was one for gold, and there's a big one coming up for oil, and that continues to be an important date. And we're going to be watching the Maduro's actions and making determinations about how we will proceed.
Just a couple more. I don't know if there's something you're following, but tensions between Colombia and Argentina.
I have been following that.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. That makes two of us.
It's not the same as saying I'm going to have anything to say about it, but I have been following it.
Right, I wasn't counting But what do you make of it? I mean, if I understand the chronology, the president of Argentina, President Millet, said that President Petro is quite a terrorist, and Colombia has expelled diplomats. Has the U.S. has friendly relations with both countries? Has the U.S. been dealing at all with it?
So I think I'm going to stay out of this one. This is ultimately an issue between Colombia and Argentina. I will say that we, as you noted, maintain strong relations with both of them, and we support continued dialogue and diplomatic relations between both sides. But as to this specific dispute, I think I will refrain from.
And you're going to stay out of the actual remarks?
Yes, I think that would be wise.
Just more before I yield. Do you have anything more to say about Niger after yesterday? Anything more?
No, it's something that we continue to work on, and we continue to engage with the CNSP, but I don't have an update. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt. Can you give us any indication or awareness of the of Haiti's transitional presidential council being closer to formation? I believe 8 members have been chosen of what's supposed to be a 9-member council, and any update on U.S. plans for further evacuations of Americans from Haiti?
So on the first, you may have seen that they issued a statement yesterday. We were encouraged to see the Transitional Presidential Council release its first statement. We hope that the council will continue to work to take the steps they outlined in that statement, including finalizing their organization and operation, appointing an interim prime minister, and taking steps to restore order to Haiti. Ultimately, as we've said, these are decisions for Haitians to make. We will continue to work with CARICOM and our partners in the region to offer our support for them as they go through this process. And then with respect to facilitating the departure of American citizens, let me first give you an update on the numbers. We now have successfully evacuated or facilitated the departure of somewhere around 450 U.S. citizens since March 17th. That includes over 300 that have departed Port-au-Prince and almost 100 from Cap Haitian. There are helicopters that are going today from Port-au-Prince to Santo Domingo, and we continue to explore other alternatives and other options to get American citizens out of Haiti, but I don't have any announcements today. But we're going to continue to work on that and may have more to say tomorrow or over the weekend.
Thank you very much, Matt. My first question is about Congress had asked the Assistant Secretary Donald Lu to send the Pakistani U.S. ambassador in Pakistan, Mr. Bloom, to meet Imran Khan. Any update when he's meeting?
Congress asked? Who in Congress?
You know the congressional hearing where Mr. Donald Lu had appeared?
I remember that, yeah. Usually Congress means like an act of Congress. Do you mean like a member of Congress? Or?
Yes. A couple of members of Congress had asked the Assistant Secretary that the U.S. ambassador should go and meet Imran Khan in jail to see how he is, what's his situation.
I don't have any updates on meetings by the ambassador.
Okay, just one more thing. 6,000 scholarships each year the U.S. gives to Pakistani students, and not a single complaint has ever been seen. All students are taken on merit. It's amazing. But since the lady who you have called Milestone, because I carry these values from the high school and university here, from the U.S., so that's why I do get upset at times when you use terms like Milestone for corrupt people. This principal in Pakistan.
Sorry to have upset you.
Yes, it does. Michael Thompson, a principal at a university, a college in Lahore, where the Milestone lady that you call is the chief minister there. He just resigned there because one of her favorite tried to waive off his son's tuition fee. The principal, an Australian principal working in Lahore. Isn't this shameful? And should you be calling Milestone to people?
I could not possibly have a comment on that situation. Go ahead, in the back. I'll come to you next. Go in the back.
Okay.
Behind you. Sorry, I'll come to you. I'll come to you next. Back of the room. You're halfway through.
The United States approval of limited operation in Rafah acts as a green light for Israel to start military operation in Rafah. This is seen as a step back in the U.S. stand, which affecting its image and credibility. What's your comment, please?
I think that's a bit of a mischaracterization of what we've said with respect to Rafah. First of all, we have always made clear that we support Israel's right to hold Hamas accountable and its right to take the fight to Hamas operatives inside Gaza, including in Rafah. what we have said is that we think that there is a better way to do that than the full-scale operation that Israel has said it's contemplating, and we look forward to having a conversation in the coming days with Israel to lay out what those options could look like and what that better path could look like. We have always made clear, though, that whatever kind of military operation that Israel conducts, whether it be in Rafah, whether it be in Khan Yunis, or whether it be anywhere else, needs to take into account the civilian population and minimize civilian harm to the population in those communities.
Excuse me, there is a guarantee that civilian will not affected, will not dangerous, their life?
Look, I think it's hard. I mean, it's obviously in any war impossible to make a guarantee. What we want to see is civilian harm minimized to the maximum extent possible, and so that means designing military campaigns around protecting civilians first. It's one thing the Secretary has made clear in his conversations with the government of Israel that they ought to do. And at the same time, it's a separate issue, but it's very much connected, making sure that they do everything to facilitate the delivery of humanitarian assistance so that those civilians who do remain in Rafah or anywhere else inside Gaza have access to food and water and medicine and shelter that they need to survive in what is obviously a very difficult situation in the middle of an open war.
Okay, excuse me. I want to ask you about the mission of the American military delegation to Tel Aviv, whether as an alternative of visit of the Israeli military delegation to Washington, D.C., and what the ideas they carry. And there is headlines for this delegation.
So, with respect to a military delegation, I think my colleagues at the Pentagon are briefing in an hour, a little over an hour, and I would encourage you to submit that question to them. They should speak to that.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Thank you.
For the Italian delegation. So that's my question. United States, NATO under President Biden got more strong, and Europe is happy about it. But there are talks in Europe. Different government would like to create an European force that can support NATO and the U.S. So what would it be the answer from the U.S., from the State Department, if Europe would create their own European forces to protect Europe?
So I don't want to speculate. We will continue to work with our European partners. But as you made clear in I think the lead into your question, we have been very clear about the United States' commitment to NATO, the United States' commitment to our transatlantic alliance, the United States' commitment to all of our allies in Europe, and we think it's important that NATO be bolstered and expanded, as we have seen happen with the increase in 2 members in the last year or so.
Yeah,
can I ask? Yeah, go ahead.
So they're not against NATO. That actually this force would make it NATO stronger. But the other question would be. Does the U.S. believe that Europe should be more active to protect themselves? Let's say also helping more Ukraine or be more active in the Mediterranean with the Middle East, or should be done always together with the U.S.?
So I think that's an incredibly broad question that's hard to answer in the time I have here. I would say that we want to work together with our European allies, but that doesn't mean that they can't do things outside of cooperation with the United States. But we share values and interests with those countries, and we work together. And sometimes they do things separately, but that pursue our common goals, and we of course support that.
Thank you.
So it's about a dozen CEOs from American businessmen met with Xi Jinping yesterday. So the CCP has been, notorious for linking silence with human rights abuses on a trade relationship. How does the United States ensure that human rights is the foundation of these trade relationships with China?
So I will say that in all of our meetings with officials from the PRC, we make clear where we have concerns about China's human rights practices. We raise them consistently. That includes the Secretary when he has met with his counterparts, and that includes other officials from the U.S. government. Make very clear what we think about human rights in China and where we have deep concerns.
And also the CCP is banning Intel and AMD sales, their chips. How does the U.S. protect American companies in this regard doing business with China?
Let me take that one back and get you an answer. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hamelbeck, to the Moscow attack, the New York Times reported today that the United States, it did not provide Moscow with all the information it had about the threat of the attack because it didn't want to disclose its sources and methods. Do you believe the warning Washington provided to Moscow contained all the details about the attack?
So I'm not going to speak to intelligence information from here. I think I've always made that pretty clear. But what I'll say is that we provided clear, detailed information to Russian authorities about terrorist threats against large gatherings and concerts, notable word, in Moscow. And unfortunately, I have to leave it at that.
One more question. There are media reports in Russia and Ukraine that Victoria Nuland had to resign because of an imminent investigation about her activity in Ukraine since 2014. Do you have anything on that?
That is absolutely false. And I know Toria has long been a boogeyman for the Russian government. It's not the first time they've propagated disinformation against her. I guess I might have thought it would stop with her departure from the State Department, but maybe I'm surprised that it hasn't. No, that is absolutely false. And I think with that, we'll wrap for today. Thanks, everyone.